Did you ever thought you could knit your own shorts? This video is a companion to my pattern Through the Grapevine shorts, which you can find on Ravelry and on Etsy. Okay, so before starting your shorts, you're gonna make sure that you gauge your yarn. What that means is you're gonna create a square that is about 4 times 4 inches, and that it matches the gauge that's on the pattern. I'm gonna put it on the screen. This is the gauge. If you don't know how to do gauge, I might make a video about it specifically, but I'm not gonna go into that for this video because there's a lot to cover. Once you have your gauge, you should have 2 sets of needles. I'm using 3.5 and 4 millimeter circular needles. If you want, you can also use double pointed needles, and if your gauge was met with a different size needle than for the bigger one, then you should use that as your base and then go 0.5 for the smaller one. So it's more important that you meet that gauge than you're using the same ones as I am. So as you can see, I made these shorts with 2 colors. You can also just use the same color. It doesn't really matter. It's up to you. I just wanted it to look a little bit contrast. So I'm using a white color, like natural color, and then like a pink color. They're both cotton yarn, and as long as you meet your gauge and then you have the amount of yards that you need for your size, you should be fine. So let's cast on these shorts. I'm gonna use my smaller needles for casting on, which in my case are 3.5 millimeters. So I'm gonna start by casting on the number of stitches that you see on the pattern. So it depends on the size that you're making, but for size small, which is the one I'm making, you need 130 stitches. So I'm gonna cast on using the long tail method. So I start with 2, 3, and I'm just gonna keep going until I have 130. So obviously this is gonna take a while, but I'll meet you there once I have all 130 stitches cast on to my needles. Once all of the stitches are casted on, it looks something like this. I'm gonna make sure that they're all facing the same way so that when I connect them together, they're not gonna be twisted. And now I will place my beginning of round marker and join them in the round. So I'll simply make a knit 1 here, knit 1. Okay, and now it's all joined together. And I will continue with a purl 1 and repeat that, knit 1, purl 1. That's gonna be our ribbing pattern, which we are going to repeat all the way around until we get back to our beginning of round. Once you're back to the beginning of round, we're simply going to continue in the same way, knitting and purling, knit 1, purl 1, all the way around again. So you're just gonna repeat this over and over for as many rounds as you need until you reach the length of the waistband that you want. It could be about 3 inches, or if you want it to be folded in like the one I showed, then it needs to be at least double the size that you want it to be. So if you want a 3-inch waistband, you have to knit about 6 inches of these knit purl ribbing. So I'm just gonna keep going, and once I have the length that I want, I'll come back and show you. So at this point, I have the trim of the shorts as long as I want it to be. You can keep going, or you can leave it long enough that it's gonna be able to fold it. It's up to you. I decided I'm gonna change colors, so I'm gonna be using this pink instead. You could decide to stay with the same color as you did first, or change as well. And I'm also changed needles to the bigger ones. So I already put all my stitches on those needles, so you can also pick up as you go. So what we're gonna do now is a setup round where we're gonna be putting some stitch markers. So make sure that you have a few of those in hand. So we'll start, and I'm gonna knit 26 stitches. Okay, so I've knit 26 stitches with the pink, and I will then place my first marker here. Now I am going to knit 15 more stitches. And I will place another marker. Make sure that the markers are different from your beginning of round markers so you don't get confused. Now I am going to knit another 26 stitches. I have 26 stitches and I will place another marker and then knit 26 more. I've knit 26 and I will place yet another stitch marker and then I'll knit another 13. And finally, we are gonna place our last marker and we're just gonna knit to the end, but it should be another 26 stitches. So at this point, the way my stitches are distributed are, this is the beginning of round and this is gonna be the very front of your shorts. So when you turn it around, this will be the middle of the front, and these two 13 stitches that are separated here are gonna be the cable, and this one here is the very middle of the back of your shorts. So that's how you know what all of these mean. So now we're going to knit short rows. So to do that, I'm going to begin by knitting to the first marker. Okay, so I got to my marker. I'm gonna slip the marker and I am going to purl 2. So purl 1, 2, then I'm gonna knit 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, and I will purl 1 and finally knit 4 more. 1, 2, 3, 4, and purl 2. So at this point you should be at your next marker and you are going to slip this marker as well. And then you're going to continue knitting until you find the next marker. I've gotten to my marker, I slipped the marker, and this is where the short rows begin. So the short rows are gonna help make the back of the shorts higher so that they cover your bum better. You can skip them if you want, but I don't recommend that you do skip them. So here's how you do it. It's very easy. Just follow these steps. So we're gonna begin by knitting 6 stitches here. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And now we're gonna do the short rows, which this stitch is called turn slip yarn over, TSO. So the first thing we're gonna do is turn our work around. And now we are looking at the wrong side of the work. So we're gonna make sure that the working yarn is on the front of your work. Look on the front of you. If you're doing English, it would be with your other hand, but it would be here. And then we're going to slip your first stitch as if to purl. So I slip it and I will pull the yarn to show those 2 legs of the stitch underneath. So it kind of looks like a double stitch, and we're gonna call it that, double stitch. And then I am gonna bring my yarn kind of around, like as if I'm pulling over, so that it's back on the front and I have these 2 legs up here. So now we're going to purl until we hit that marker again. There he is. I will slip that marker and I will purl 6 stitches. Okay, so as you can see, this part is starting to get higher, which is what we want. So we are going to TSO again to turn slip over. So it's on the wrong side of the work. It's very similar. So first off, we're gonna turn our work around. Now that we turn it, we're gonna make sure that your yarn is on the front again. Same thing, we're gonna slip the stitch as if to purl, and then pull on it to show those two legs on my right stitch, and I will continue knitting like normal with my yarn in the back. So now this short row that I'm gonna do next, we're gonna repeat a few times. So first we're gonna knit to this marker, slip the marker, and I'm gonna continue knitting until I hit that double stitch that I made before. Okay, so here's the double stitch. As you can see, it looks like 2 stitches. We're going to knit this as if it was 1 single stitch. Okay, and we are going to knit 4 more stitches. 4. Okay, so we have 4 more. And once again, we're gonna do the same thing. I'm gonna turn the work around. With the yarn on the front, I am gonna slip the first one, then pull it up to show those 2 stitches, and bring the yarn back on the front so I can purl. So now I will purl until I reach my marker. Here's my marker. I pass the marker, and I will keep purling until I get to that double stitch again. There's a double stitch, and I will purl this one as if it was just 1 stitch again. There it goes. And I will purl 4 extra stitches. Okay, so now again, we're gonna turn our work around. Make sure that the yarn is on the front. Slip, pull to show the, pull to show those 2 stitches, and continue knitting. So we're gonna do that same thing. Knitting to the marker, knitting to the double stitch, knitting that double stitch together, and then knitting extra 4 stitches. We will do that 2 more times. So this one and then 1 more, and I'll show you how it looks from there. After that last turn, I'm gonna do the last turn. I have my work on the front. I just did short rows on the back. And remember, I'll bring my yarn forward and I slip this stitch. I pull it up so it shows the 2 stitches there. And that was my last turn. So as you can see, this is what the short rows are doing, and these are called German short rows. And they created this extra fabric that is not on the rest of the shorts, and it's gonna make the back longer. So we're gonna get back to the beginning of the round now. So I'm just gonna knit all the way to my marker again. There's a marker, we slip the marker. And I'm gonna keep knitting, and I'm gonna get to that double stitch again as I did before. So I'm knitting 1 more stitch, and there's my double stitch. I'm just gonna knit this as 1, and then I'm gonna continue knitting. This time I'm not turning, I'm just gonna continue knitting until this next marker. Okay, I knit to the marker, I slip the marker, and then I'm gonna do that setup that I did on the other side before we did the short rows. On where we're gonna have the cables. So this is going to be the same as before. Purl 2, then knit 4, purl 1, knit 4, and purl 2 more. So now we should be back at this marker. We're just gonna slip that marker, and then I'm just gonna knit until I get to the beginning of the round. And that will be the end of my short rows, and then we're in the end of my setup round. And we will move over, when I get to the beginning of the round here, we're gonna move to the straight body. Before we begin the straight body, make sure you got a cable needle like this, or you can also use
a extra double pointed needle, but you'll need something to hold those stitches for the cabling. So what this is gonna be is a 4 round repeat that you're gonna do a few times. So make sure you get those 4 rounds right, and then you'll just repeat them over and over. You can always go back on the video to watch them. The first thing we're going to do is knit. This is the beginning of the round. We're gonna knit until the first stitch marker that we find. So I'm knitting the last stitch and I got to the marker, and I will slip this marker. And basically what I'm gonna do is repeat what I had done before. This is purl 2, knit 4, purl 1, knit 4, purl 2. It's the same thing. So purl 2, knit 4, then purl 1, knit 4, and purl 2. Like that. Then we should have gone to the next marker, and I'll slip that marker. And I am going to continue knitting until the next marker, the one that was in the back. We got to our next marker. Here are our short rows. And if you find a double stitch, just knit it together like we did before. Slip this marker, and we're gonna continue knitting the same way until the next marker. Slip the marker, and we'll do the same thing we did before. Purl 2, knit 4, 3, 4, purl 1, knit 4, purl 2. So this area in between these two markers, and the same on the other side, which is where the cables are going to go later, is always the same pattern repeat that is kind of mirror. So I'll slip that marker again, and finally I will continue knitting until I get to the beginning of the round once more. Okay, there's my beginning of round, and I finished round 1. So what we just did was round 1 of the pattern repeat, and basically we're gonna do exact same thing that we did before 2 more times. So the round that we just did, repeat it twice more. So round 1, 2, and 3 are the same, and then round 4 will be different, and I'll meet you when you get to round 4. It should look something like this. We have 3 rounds plus the setup round, so there's 3, and we are gonna do round 4. So first things first, we gotta knit from the beginning of the round until the first marker. Here's the first marker. I'm just gonna slip that marker, and here's where our cables begin. So we're gonna purl this first 2 stitches, and then we're gonna cable 4 right, which what that means is I am going to take 3 stitches and put them on my cable needle like this, and then slip that needle to the back of my work, and I'm going to knit 1 stitch only. So after that, we will take those stitches back from the cable needle or your double pointed needle, put the needle down, and knit this 3 stitches. That's our first cable. Okay, so next we are going to purl the first stitch, the next stitch, and now we will do cable 4 left. So that means we will slip only 1 stitch onto the cable needle, leave it here on the front like this, and then I'll knit 3 stitches. Okay, so take that needle back, take that stitch back from the needle, and knit it. Okay, so that's this is cable right and cable left. Then I will purl 2, and by now we should be at our marker. Slip that marker. Okay, so that is what basically is gonna be happening in between those 13 stitches that you have here. So I'm gonna continue knitting until the next marker, which is in the back. then knit again until the next marker, so that it takes us to those 13 stitches, and I will repeat that so you can watch it again. Okay, so I've knit to my next marker where I'm going to do the cabling. So I went all the way through here until this one, just so I can show you once more. So first we purl these 2 stitches. Now we're gonna cable for right, so we will take 3 stitches, hold them on the back, and knit 1 stitch, and then knit 3 from the cable. You can knit it directly from the click cable, but I like them back on my left needle. So I hold 1, 2, 3, then I'll purl 1, and now we're gonna cable for left. So I will slip 1 stitch, hold it on the front, and then knit 3. Make sure you pull so that there isn't a lot of space here. So we'll knit 3, and then I'm putting this stitch back on my left needle from the cable and knit it 1, and then purl 2, and you have your cables. So now I'll slip this and continue knitting until I get to the beginning of the round. So those are the 4 rounds that you have to do your 4-round repeat. We are going to do those 4 rounds 2 more times. If you wanted your shorts to be higher, because this is upside down, actually your shorts will go like this. If you wanted them to be like higher waisted, because remember this is gonna fold, then you can do the pattern repeat a few more times, but it's always all 4 rounds. You can't end on a 3 or 2 round. It always has to be all 4 of them. So I'm gonna do that pattern repeat twice more, and I will come back and show you what it looks like and what happens afterwards. Now that your shorts are about the length that you want them to be, you see that I've done the same pattern repeat about 4 times. Here we're gonna do one. We will begin on the first stitch. It'll be KFB, knit front, knit back. So knit front, knit back on the same stitch. So that creates 2 stitches. Then I'm gonna continue knitting until the marker. Once I get to the marker, I'm gonna slip that marker and then just knit all of the stitches in between, either a purl or a knit, whatever it is. So first we have 2 purls, 4 knits and a purl. So you're just gonna do all of those stitches. Then we're gonna get to the next marker, slip that marker, and I will continue knitting until this middle marker over here. You will knit until you are 1 stitch before the marker, and here we're going to do another increase, another KFB, knit front, knit back, in that same stitch, slip the marker, and then repeat the increase, knit front, knit back, and then continue knitting until we get to the next marker. At the next marker, we're going to get again to this side part with the purls and knits, so we're just going to knit and purl the same, continue knitting until 1 stitch before the beginning of round marker. And once we get to that stitch before the beginning of round, we will do another increase, knit front back, and slip the marker. So that was the increase round. We're gonna go to our next round, which will not have any increases. We just knit all of our stitches, or purl if there's a purl, all the way another round before we continue with increases. So just keep going. Now that I've gone all the way around without doing any increases, on the next round I will repeat the first increase round that I did, exactly the same. So beginning with a KFB on the first stitch, and then everything else will be exactly the same. I will knit until I get to this back stitch marker and do increases on both sides, and then again until I get to the last one and do increases. So I'll do all of that and I'll meet you back at the end of the round. Once you finish that last round, you might have noticed that we are on our 3rd round of the cable repeat. So we will do 1 more round, no increases, just
doing every knit and purl and adding those cable repeats, basically the same round 4 for the straight cable repeat that we've been doing before. And with that, we are done doing increases. So now I'm gonna continue knitting straight, doing that 4 pattern repeat 4 more times. If you still wanted it to be longer, you still have a chance to do 1 more repeat, but always doing the 4 rounds, so that we can continue having the cable pattern. So I'm gonna go do that and show you how it looks. So after doing those 4 rounds of the repeat, we have a length of something like this. As you remember, this is the top of the shorts. They actually go like this. And if you want it to be longer, you can do more repeats, but I'm gonna stop here and we're gonna move on to the right leg. So to do the right leg, I will remove this beginning of round marker. So now I'm going to cast on 6 stitches onto this needle, and to do that, I'll turn my work around to the wrong side of the work, and basically I am going to knit into this stitch and then put that stitch back on the needle, and then just repeat that process, making a knit stitch and then putting it back 6 times. So that's 2, 4, 5, and 6. So now we turn the work back around again, and there should be 6 new stitches in between these 2 stitches. So now I'm going to put on hold the stitches for the left leg all the way to this middle marker in the back. So to do that, I'm going to use a stitch holder, or you can also use scrap yarn just to hold it while we work on the right leg. So after putting all those stitches on hold, as you can see here, half the shorts are on hold and half of them are still on my needle, and I am still where I casted on those stitches, and simply I'm going to continue knitting right off that last stitch that I put on hold, so that'll gonna close the leg and create the crotch area. So I'm just gonna keep knitting normally until I reach my next stitch marker, just like before, and I am going to knit and purl whatever stitches are here just like before without doing any cabling, as if this was the first round of the 4 round repeat. And I'll just keep going until I get back to where we casted on those stitches. So I stopped right before my 6 casted on stitches. So what I'm going to do is knit 3 of these, 2, 3, and there are 3 more. And here's where I'm gonna place my beginning of round marker again, and then I can continue knitting the other 3. And basically this finishes the first round of repeats, and I'm going to do 2 more rounds exactly the same, and then the cable knitting just like before. And I will repeat the 4 stitch repeat for 1 more time. So there are in total 8 rounds of the leg. If you want your leg to be longer, you can of course knit another 4 or however long you want it, but always in the 4 round repeat. And as you can see, I'm knitting using the magic loop technique, so that I don't have to change needles. But if you prefer, you could switch to either shorter cables or double pointed needles that are on the same size, just to be, if you're more comfortable knitting the leg that's a little bit smaller than the body. So yeah, I'll meet you back when I have the length of the leg that I am comfortable with. Once we reach the length that you want your leg to be, I'm going to switch to smaller needles. These are 3.5 millimeters, and we're going to knit a rib pattern just like we did at the beginning. So it's going to be knit 1, purl 1, and at this point you can switch colors or you can stay on the same color. I'm going to stay on the same color for now and just switch, knit 1, purl 1,
knit one, purl one, and do all of that until we have the length that you want, or just about 2 inches of ribbon.
So once you finish the ribbing for that leg, I said 2 inches, but it was more like about 1.5. You can see my right leg is finished. It looks left on your screen, but it's on the right leg. And I matched it with the ribbing over here. And all we have to do at this point is cast it off and just try to make sure that it's not too tight so that it's still elastic and you can put your leg through it. So I'll just cast off regularly. I'll knit one, purl one, and then I'll take the first stitch and bring it over that stitch, and I'll just continue doing that, making sure that it is pretty loose. Don't pull on it too tight so that it'll be stretchy. So I'll just keep casting it off all the way until I finish the leg. And then when we're done doing that, our right leg will be finished, and we're gonna move on to the left leg. So I'll put all of these stitches back in my larger needle and meet you there. Now that I've picked up my stitches and I have them on the needle for the left leg, I will join in the yarn again by simply knitting the first stitch. So remember, we are at the crotch on the front, and we are going to join here and knit all the way to the end before we get again to the crotch. I'll just knit the first stitch, leaving a tail, and continue knitting until I get to the first marker that was already on the leg. Now that I am at my marker, I slip it and I will knit again as if this was round 1 of the 4 round repeat by knitting and purling wherever I find my stitches. Purl 1, knit 4, purl 2, and then when I get to my next stitch marker, I'll slip it and I'll continue knitting until I get to the end. Now that I'm at the end of these stitches, back to the crotch, I'm going to pick up all 6 stitches in between with my needle. Now that I have my 6 stitches picked up, I am simply going to knit 3 of them. Then I'll place a new beginning of round marker and I'll knit the other 3. That will join my crotch at the center. There's still a little bit of a hole, which is normal. Don't worry about it. We can come back at the end and just sew this together. But now my 2 legs are attached, and I will continue knitting the same way that it was done on the right leg. I will knit 2 more rounds without doing any cabling, and then in the 4th round I will cable again, and I will continue until the leg and the pink color before the ribbing is just as long as the one on the right. Once your leg is the same length as the other one, we're gonna switch needles again to the smaller ones, and I will change colors again to white to match the other leg. So you should have done this on the other leg. Simply, I'm gonna take my smaller needles and start knitting with those instead of with the older needles, and now I'm going to attach the new color, and I'll start knitting 1, but then we will go purl 1, knit 1, purl 1 to create that ribbon pattern. As you get to the markers, the old markers that we had, we're gonna remove them and just ignore what you had before and continue knitting 1, purl 1 all the way around, removing markers as you go. Now that I'm at the other marker, I'll remove it and keep knitting all the way around.
Now that I'm back at the beginning of round, I'm just gonna keep going, knit one, purl one, knit one, purl one, and I will make this ribbon as long as the one on the other leg so that they match. So I'll just keep going the same way. And once both of your legs look the same like they do here, all we have to do is cast off the way we did with the last leg. So exactly the same way, I'll knit and purl and then pull one stitch over the last and keep going like that, making sure that you leave it quite loose so it doesn't get too tight. So I'll cast off the entire round and we're almost done with the shorts. Almost, not quite. Then we're also going to weave all of the ends that you can find like these that are floating around using a tapestry needle like this. Basically, you put it on the needle and we're gonna find a place in which we can weave it into our work. And pull it. And I'm just gonna keep doing that until the ends are completely woven into the fabric. So I'll do that for all of the ones I can find, but I'm gonna leave this one for the end because we're gonna do something else with the waistband. This is also a good chance to close any holes that are still on your fabric, like for example at the crotch, with the same ends that you have. You can close those up. You can leave it as is and be done, or you can make an elastic waistband. So I do recommend doing this because, you know, this especially cotton yarn can get really stretched out and not go back into shape. So we are going to do that, and to do that, simply going to fold in this waistband in half, and using that same darning needle I will sew it into place. And I'm also gonna need some elastic that it's enough to wrap around, or it also has to be thick enough. This one's kind of thin, but it should be fine just to fit in there. So I am gonna measure this, the size of this waist. So this is about the size of the waist at the moment, and I'll cut it to that size just to make sure I have enough. And now with my darning needle and my waist folded in half, I am simply going to pick up the stitches right next to it and basically sew it into place. And I'm gonna go all the way around this waist to sew it, but I will leave at the end a little bit of a space, so I won't sew it shut completely. I'll leave an opening so that we can fit in the elastic. So leaving a space open before it's completely closed, I'm gonna start inserting the elastic through this hole that we've created. And it's kind of easy to do because the fabric is so elastic too, but just trying to keep putting the elastic in until you reach the other side, and then you can pull it from that other side. Okay, so now the elastic is all the way around and there's still this part to sew. So before I sew it closed like the rest of it, I'm going to sew together these two pieces of elastic so that they won't come off. So with needle and thread, I'm just going to put this one on top of the other and sew it together. It doesn't have to be perfect. I just have to make sure that they don't come off. So I'm just sewing a few stitches in there. And this is all gonna be hidden inside of the shorts anyway. So now my shorts have the elastic and I can finish closing this.
And that's it. It's finished. It has an elastic band and it's all done. It's ready to wear.